when you just had been feeling well with your family, with your present or with your further family in the past. And when you think of that, perhaps you can feel it with your body, with your senses, how it was then to feel safe and calm, peaceful and well. Perhaps you can remember this in your body, how it felt. Perhaps how to feel a hug, how to feel when somebody looks at you and you can see the eyes of the beloved ones. Perhaps you have been eating together. You can smell it, can taste it. Perhaps you did something together. You can see, what was it? What was the common activity in your family with which you felt well? Or maybe you have had friends or guests, had been with others of the family, and you felt well with them, with the others. And maybe you also remember how you then, with your family, thought about what is important for you, what gives meaning to you, what is meaningful for you, and with what gives you the feeling of, yes, here we are in our right place. Perhaps, dear colleagues, you remembered when I said this, these 4 areas of our life with which we can feel safe. To feel safe with our body is something that very, very early, before we are born, is something like a feeling that we have combined with a safety in the womb of our mother. It stays as a memory in us, as a body memory. The body has this memory. The body is linked with this capacity to remember all good or bad things in life. So the body can feel safety. So when we today talk about families in a crisis situation, for instance, when you are separated in 2 different countries against your will, when you cannot see each other, when you cannot feel each other, when you even might not hear each other, when you do not know how it is. In this situation, it is very, very important to remember what your body had experienced before, to remember what you did together before as activity, to remember how it was with others, with your friends, with the family members, with the neighbors. Then it's so important to remember, what is it, what links you and your family? And what gives you the feeling of, yes, we are our family, we have our identity. This is special in our family. In this way, I would like to introduce this evening as these memories that gave us safety are needed in situations of crisis. And it is so important. It is so important to come back to these memories when we are in other crisis situations and challenges. Dear colleagues, I would like now to share with you some slides, if possible, and to give you some ideas with the help of these slides. Yeah. Let's see if it works. Can you see the slides? Attachment? Katja?
Yes. Slides with attachment. Yeah.
Attachment as the basis of the family. Was what I asked you in the beginning also to remember. When you remember with your body, with your senses, when you had been eating together at a table, for instance, that's the feeling of we had been attached. Of course, everybody of us had had a different appetite, maybe. So we had different aspects that we liked, maybe. But there was still something that was in common. And this gave us the feeling of an attachment as a basis for our family. Attachment as such is the basis for mankind. We wouldn't be humans if we wouldn't have this capacity to be attached to each other on a biological level with oxytocin, so that even our hormones bring us together. Or with how we act with each other, dancing with each other, or as a baby being on an arm of the mother and the father and the others, and to feel that and going out together. All this is attachment. And this is what we need to remember in a crisis. And this is what we have to have again when we are in a crisis, to find back to these moments when we have these feelings. With you, I feel well. Here, with this feeling, with what we do, with whom we are, with what we want to reach, we feel well. So in each crisis situation, in each big challenge, we have to come back to this feeling we are attached, even when we are distant. That's one. On this basis of this attachment, of this, you can say biologically, oxytocin, and attachment of the persons and the attachment of who we are as a family, on this basis we differentiate, and everybody of us becomes an own individual person. That's differentiation. Differentiation means everybody of us in the family has different capacities and different personalities. Together we have a family, but everybody of us is anyhow a specialist, also in the personality. So there is also difference between us, and in this way detachment can happen in the meaning of I do it my way, but I take with this my inner attachment, safe attachment feeling from the family to be myself when I'm a young boy going out of home to the discotheque, for instance. So the next that we can see is in a family.
Arno, I'm sorry.
Yeah?
The slides are not changing.
Also, moment, yeah, I'll put it again, just a moment. Sometimes it's very slow with the slides, yes?
Maybe.
You see it again?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. Now?
Now it's here.
And yeah. And now? Yeah. So a family creates an own identity, you can say, in this attachment. Each family has a different kind of attachment. One family eats together always at the same time. Others have the attachment that only the food is the same, but they eat at different times. So different families have different ways and styles, different kinds of unity of the family. And now in challenging separations, we can say, then we have to defend our family integrity when we are in a crisis. What brings us together again to feel this unity? Can you tell me if you see the 4 areas now again?
No.
The same slide. The previous one.
Yeah. I'll try again. Never mind. We can also go on without slides. Oh, better without slides then. So, I think most of you will know the 4 areas of the life experience with body, achievement, contact, and future. And so I think we don't need the slides, but we need the words of attachment. And we need also this model of Positum. That means we have to take what is given to us. We cannot just wish something. In a crisis situation, for instance, we have to take what we have. This is the Positum of positive psychotherapy. Positum means the given one, this, what is existing. And within this, I can find a safe situation within what is given. Even if it is a shelter that gives us a feeling of safety, to see what is given to us in this moment for safety. So Positum means we bring in our old experience and our identity of the family. And now in a new crisis situation, we have to see what is given to us in this moment. For instance, that I see, okay, this watch that I have is for me the symbol of a link with a special person. So it gives me the feeling I'm close to you. So in a given situation, that means in Positum situations, Positum the given, we can have symbols to link to the safe situation in the past. Therefore, some persons have, for instance, something like an altar or pictures or symbols of their relatives close to them, so that they feel this closeness, even if they are separated. And when we look again to the balance model, body, this means nearness when we need it. It means tenderness when we need it. It means caressing, not only for oxytocin, but to feel well. That's one aspect of being together. If we are separated, we have to find out in which way can we get back this feeling of being close to each other, to feel each other. What does remind me of that feeling that I had in the past with each other? That's the body aspect. The achievement aspect is, hey, what did we do together? What was that? Oh, we played music together in a special way. Or, we constructed together. Or we looked special Netflix series together. Or we constructed at the house together. To call back this memory, can find out to see, okay, what of that is existing now that we can do together, even if we are separated, even if we are in big difficulties. And the third aspect, contact, means also we remember all these neighbors from the past, the relatives, brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents. They give us patience, they give us time, they give us trust, confidence, hope, or faith. In a crisis situation, when we are out of that, I don't know where that was. In a crisis situation, we can remember these persons of the past, but they are not around. In a crisis situation, we have to find out which persons are around with which we can meet with which we can really now contact instead of the ones that we had as neighbors, as friends, as sisters, as brothers. Which are these who now are available like our family in the past? These are the areas of body, achievement, contact. And the last area of future and meaning is something like an imagination in our head. It is a representation of something that was important, gave us meaning in the past, gave us an identity. Something that gave us a faith to believe in something, to look up and to say, yes, wow, I feel safe with you. If it is God, if it is a family, if it is an idea, with what we believe in. This is something we always can take with us. We don't even need symbols in the moment when we have that feeling, yes, I believe in something, it's inside of me. When I believe in the situation that we will have peace again after a terrible situation, like Viktor Frankl did it when he was in the concentration lager, he thought, this I want to write down because afterwards everybody needs to know what happened here. I have a task that I take out of that. And he found a meaning in what he survived. He found a meaning in what he suffered from. This is the fourth area of the balance model, meaning and future. Understandable until here, Katja? So, until now, I talked more about the balance model, as you see. And I would like to go on a little bit to explain it a little bit more, because in a crisis situation, when you feel alone, for instance, in a crisis situation, when you have lost everything that was safe before, it is very important then to come back to this feeling of body, nearness, tenderness, to touch yourself, for instance, to have the feeling of, okay, sometimes I need to hug myself if somebody else is missing, for instance. What can you do for yourself to have this body feeling again? And how is it, with whom can I be? With whom can I move? And with whom can I be in resonance in a difficult situation so that we can share this situation? And the question is, when you are in a crisis and you are desperate yourself, look at it. What is existing just now in the body area? Are you healthy enough to breathe? Are you healthy enough to eat? Do you have something? What is it, what you have? And what is missing? Try to differentiate that. What is existing, what I have, and what is missing? And then to ask the question, okay, when something is missing, what can I develop? What can I do more that is possible in this situation? So this is the aspect of body and activity, achievement. What do we like to do in the situation of a crisis differently from before? Suddenly we have a new situation, and to find out, okay, so because my former activity is not possible anymore, which activity is possible now that I can fulfill? Where is my responsibility in achievement within this crisis situation now? What is fulfilled, what I can do? What is shortcoming? Which strong areas do I have as a backup? Which weak areas could be developed in this special situation? This is the second life area of work. The third area is the contact area. And here also I can ask, what is fulfilled in this situation in the crisis, with whom I am just now, suddenly, accidentally, for instance, and how can we use this relation that is existing now to help each other? Which strong areas can we find out together? Which weak areas can we develop with each other? And the fourth area, future and family. Family usually contains the plan of having children, grandchildren, and so on, to see a row, in a line in time. That is the idea of family, usually. To give something to the future and to take something from our parents and grandparents. So, how is it now in the crisis situation, when we maybe lost a lot of what we had in mind for the future? Again, Positum. What is here and now important for today and for tomorrow, for the future of tomorrow? Who knows how will it be in 5 years? But what is important now for the evening, for today, for tomorrow? And what is already fulfilled and what is shortcoming? What gives me motivation and inner energy inside of me? And which weak areas do I notice? Which can I develop now that I didn't use before? To create something for the next day, for the next hour. So, dear colleagues, this had been the first idea to use the balance model for family situations in crisis. So to differentiate these areas in our life. How is it with the body? We have a feeling from the past when we have had once safety feeling before the crisis. We can memorize this, we can use this as a representation in us, and we can now find out what is existing just now in the 4 areas of life. And Peseshkian quite often said, if one area is very strong, you have a lot to do, for instance. It's important to see which other area you can develop. It's not important to say, I will work less when I work a lot. It's more important to see what was shortcoming in the other areas. What can I develop in the other areas? And this is important in the crisis, to see what can I develop that I couldn't see before. Now I can develop it, a new capacity, a new way. So, the balance model gives us a tool to see, okay, in which areas is it existing, in which areas I have to create something together with others, if possible. In the beginning, I mentioned already the 3 stadiums of interaction. These also are important in a crisis situation. Attachment, differentiation, detachment. When we as human beings say, hello, that's the attachment phase. I recognize you. I'm happy that I see you. That's attachment. How are you? Is then my question, because I don't know. And we share what we do not know. That's differentiation. And before we go our ways, we say goodbye. In many languages, it means auf Wiedersehen in German. Das Vidanya. So we see each other again. We plan for that time when we see each other again. That's detachment in the meaning of Peseshkian. That means we prepare again for coming together, or even if we don't come together again, to think of each other. So we will not be lost in our hearts. So detachment means, it's not that I'm autonomous. Detachment means I take you, I take our experience in my heart with me. If we don't see each other, or if we see each other again, doesn't matter. You are in my heart. I take you with me. That is detachment in the meaning of Peseshkian. So this attachment with you becomes part of me. When we are detached from our family, far away from our family, we take all that the family gave us in our heart, So detachment in this way means attachment transported to another place. Another tool that we can use in positive psychotherapy, maybe later I can show you again this slide for that, is that we distinguish between primary and secondary capacities. I mentioned already the so-called primary capacities before, like when you think of the grandparents, quite often these capacities are mentioned. Oh yes, my grandmother. I had always the feeling she had much more time than my parents. She had much more patience than my parents. When it was with her, it felt so warm. She was so loving. My parents educated me, but my grandmother was so loving. And I could trust her. I could tell her so many things. And grandfather then said some comments and was so loving and accepting. These are the primary capacities of love, acceptance, hope, faith, and so on. These are the capacities with which we create this family attachment. So when we are in a crisis situation, usually these primary capacities are lacking mostly. We don't have time, something must be urgent, or we cannot do it, we cannot do what we want. So quite often there is a lack of this feeling of trust, love, acceptance, or hope in crisis situations. And we have to find out with whom we can experience this. For instance, with a group around us who is in a similar situation. When we are together in a shelter, how is that? To have time for each other, to tell each other stories, to tell the children a fairy tale. This is what the grandparents gave us as their capacity of primary capacities. And in a crisis situation, we can give it to each other. More difficult to give it for ourselves. Usually with ourselves we are not so patient, but with others we can be easier patient or give time, give hope to others, share with them. So the primary capacities, I name them the grandparents' capacities mainly, can be shared with others. We can give them, and so we will get them back. These are the actual capacities that we can use in crisis situations, also as counselors, or when we have groups with refugees, for instance, or traumatized persons, to give each other this feeling of, here together we have time that we take to have patience with each other, to accept each other, to accept each other's stories, to listen to each other, and in this way to feel again united with other people that replace the attachment that we miss from the relatives maybe. So these had been actual capacities that we can use, and in the literature of positive psychotherapy and in the trainings of positive psychotherapy and with your counselors of positive psychotherapy, you will feel what primary capacities are. To have time, be patient, and so on. And to have this, we have to organize the meetings. In a crisis situation, you need to organize. When do we meet? How is it? In these minutes that we did not plan, what can we do now? We have a limited time, for instance, so we have to be precise, to be careful. So we need also so-called secondary capacities, a kind of order that gives us the feeling of, okay, I can control something. We need our personal order in our belongings, in our household, in where we are. We need a kind of order so that we recognize something around us. When we are traumatized, we need a kind of order to feel more safe. When we are traumatized, we need that safe emotional atmosphere with the others, or with a counselor, or in a group, or in a shelter. And we need the secondary capacities. That means to know when we will meet, so that we can rely on that. So to have a common order, for instance, to have regular meetings, to know, okay, we will meet again, if possible, next Wednesday, or every day at the same time, or we will call each other at the same time, so that we know we will see each other, like in The Little Prince of Saint-Exupéry, when the fox wanted to see the prince again, and therefore said, it's not possible that you come at any time. You have to tell me when you come back. Then I can feel much better when it is at a special time. So order in time, that means punctuality, can give us hope. So secondary capacities to be reliable, to be orderly, to have cleanliness, to have sense of aesthetics, gives others and ourselves a good feeling and better primary capacities. So far about that. Here I would like to, by the way, I can send you the slides in the chat as PDF. I hope this works. And then you have also the slides that I prepared for the lecture that I couldn't show you very well now. Let's see. Maybe my computer is too slow for that. Let's see. In the chat, you will have now the slides. Yes, positive family in crisis. And yeah, I think with the slides with PDF, it's the easiest way for you to see them. In these slides, there is one slide with the so-called V orientation, the conscience of relation that we have. So imagine you are a family. One part is in one country, the other family part is in another country, another family part is in a third country. You are in a separate situation against your will. What you have is a common will. You want something in common, maybe. So, Natalia, just a little moment, yeah? I'll just read that and then I'll come back. So, a common will, and you have a common feeling as a family, or a common knowledge also, and a common action, our affectivity, and common goals. This is what unites us as a family, even when we are separated. Natalia Chababnyok, you want to ask something, I understood? Oh, she raised her hand, no?
No answer. Maybe it's
Okay, yeah.
sensible. Yeah, we can continue. Maybe in the end of our meeting, we will
okay.
give the place for questions. Yeah.
So far, until now, do you have just now questions or remarks or something that we can share concerning your experience when you compare that? Not yet? Okay. If you like, I can give you another 15 minutes, some more information, and then we can start with our group feedback and your experiences. Is that okay for you? Yeah. So, which steps can we go in the crisis situation? I don't think now as a therapist. I think as a person who meets another person. You could be in a crisis, and usually you cannot prepare that. You do not know that you are in a crisis before. So what I say now is for everybody. So my first question is, like Positum, what do we have just now in this crisis? What is existing? Quite often people complain first. And in a crisis situation, it's so important first to ask, what is existing, like in trauma therapy, where we stabilize first. Stabilization means, okay, what is here and now that lets you feel better? So what is existing? What do we have? Is the first question. That's like the first finger. What do we have? And then we can ask, okay, what is now your life in the 4 areas of the balance model? How is it in these areas of the balance model? What is still okay and what needs to be supported, to be developed? Body, to do something, to contact, or to think about the next steps. That's the second step. So the first step is, what do we have? And how do you feel, of course? The second step, what is your life now in the 4 areas of life, in your body, your activity, your contact, your relation, and your idea how it is going on? And the third, with the third finger, which capacities do we have to cope with this crisis? And as far as I know, in many, many crisis situations, like now, in war times, for instance, suddenly comes up who is a specialist to repair something, who is a specialist who can do something and you didn't know before. So who has which capacities in this situation? Which capacities do we have to cope with? That's the third finger. And fourth finger, what is working well in our family and what is it what we have to work out what is missing. So what is missing and what is existing. And fifth finger would be, what can we accept? How can we understand this crisis? Like Antonovsky said, in a traumatized situation, we lose the feeling of coherence, so we lose ourselves by not understanding what's going on, not seeing a meaning in it, and not having the manageability for it. We cannot manage it. And he says the opposite is needed. How can we understand it? How can we find a meaning for it? And what can we manage in this situation? It's not the question, how can we manage the crisis? It's not possible. We can ask, what? It's not possible in general to overcome the crisis, but what can we do here and now in this situation? This kind of manageability. Just to see, okay, to open this window for air and nothing else. Or what is it, what we can do? To manage means to be active, to know I can do something, even if it is something very little. Like there are so many fairy tales about that. It's like the little drop of the rain that feeds the bird in the nest with water. So it's like that. What can we do in this very moment? So far about these steps. In a crisis situation, we mainly need to focus on our personal support. We cannot focus on a process of therapy or discoveries of how was the psychodynamic. No, it's about the here and now. Which support is now and here possible? What is existing here and now? So to focus on the personal support. And the emphasis is not on crisis or conflicts. The emphasis is on which capacities exist. What do you have? Which encouragement can be developed by knowing, there is a possibility for the whole family? Then the goal expansion. So when a family has a perspective to say, okay, when this crisis is over, then we will have a plan for that. It gives us energy. So goal expansion is also needed. A motivation for the future is needed. And sometimes we are depressive and cannot see that motivation. Then we need each other to encourage each other to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. While I had been using the positive psychotherapy tools, sometimes I come also up to some research, and for instance, some research says in a crisis situation, also it is important to remember the factors of satisfaction in families and partnerships. So to remember what is it, what brings us together. And doing this, we can use, for instance, the research of Schneewind from 2000. The first is positivism in a crisis situation. And perhaps you remember how it was and how it is in a very difficult political situation that we come up with jokes, with humor, much more, as if the situation is quite stable and nothing happens. But in crisis situations, we can have also joy, optimism, to be attractive and to attract others with the way we talk and to avoid critics. The next is open communication. That means direct and open with feelings, not indirect. In a crisis situation, it's important to be clear. Pilots learn that for crisis situations, to be absolutely clear in this moment. Not to say, oh, please, dear passengers, it might be that we have some more clouds than usually. No, the pilot has to say, what is going on now? So positivity, open communication, affections, and affections, these are primary capacities, to give love, to give faith, to enjoy the others, to give something to the others, presence anyhow, emotional presence you can say, that's affections. Or common activities, when we do something together in a crisis situation, it gives us a lot of energy back even if we had been weak. Because we can give each other our resonance of our bodies doing something together, whatever we do together. And that means also we are going to networks, and networks of friends, family, and others can help us to overcome a crisis. And sharing tasks, not doing everything alone. I can do this. I'll wash up the dishes. Better to share that, to do it together. So I mentioned this as a very simple thing in a crisis, that especially then it is important to do things together. So not only not networking and the social network, but also at home to do things together so that our body language is in resonance with each other. The body language is what encourages us. When one in the family is depressive in a crisis and the others are active with their body language, they will motivate this other person also to move, and the mimics will go with the other. Yeah, so far for this part. Now I'm interested in what you say and about your questions. And you can write your questions also in the chat, of course, or better to tell them to the translator so that everybody understands also all languages. So perhaps to raise your hand and to give us your feedback about your experience in crisis and what you think about when you hear these tools from positive psychotherapy. Who wants to start? Just raise your hand and we see who it is. Also raise your hand here in Zoom, yeah? Dodo? Bulgaria, yeah?
Мога ли да говоря свободно или да изчаквам да превеждаш?
Да, може ли?
Добре. Значи Арно първо ме потопи в моето така ранно детство, където беше доста сигурно, а, доста добре. Но после се върнах в актуалните ситуации, в които имам криза, свързана с дъщеря ми и нейната майка. И някак всичко това, което го каза, много резонира с моите преживявания, защото аз минах през тях. И ми действа
What?
успокояващо, че някак си има сламки, за които човек може да се хване в криза и дори да е в силна емоция, някак си да може да мине през рационалното.
Thank you very much, Toto.
Това.
Da? Lilia Kuzminova. Da? Microphone, yeah.
Я працюю в школі, багато розмовляю з дітьми, з батьками і стикаюся з тим, що дуже важко вибудувати майбутнє. І діти, сьогодні я мала розмову з хлопчиком, він каже, я не знаю, що
Вибачте,
таке
одну секундочку.
довіра.
Milena, please switch to
Я йому
Bulgarian channel, that's
розказувала
why you
про
don't
це.
hear the translation. Sorry. Вибачте, будь ласка, продовжуйте.
І як допомогти людям, коли на вищому рівні немає прозорої комунікації? Ми не знаємо, як буде розвиватися ситуація. Вона дуже вже довго така невизначена. Як допомогти людині вибудувати оцю майбутню свою перспективу? Дякую.
Arno, please unmute yourself. We didn't hear.
I'm sorry, I could not understand the first part of translation, so may I please ask you to repeat it a bit as an overview what the question was, because I understood only the last part.
Як допомогти людині вибудувати перспективу на майбутнє, якщо немає визначеності взагалі в ситуації в державі?
Yeah.
Дякую.
I think it is exactly what, for instance, Viktor Frankl, also many others told us, not to think like before. Everything that before was planned doesn't work anymore. So the future I had in mind in my past is not my future that I can see now. Viktor Frankl answered then the question, why are you so active? Why had you been so active? Because I knew that this, what we experience, is important for the next ones. I do not know for what, but I do something to give others something. So sometimes the future is not so much planned by what I do for myself. Sometimes it's even easier and better to think, okay, I do not know how my future will be. What is it what I can do for others, for their future? And this very often and in many situations helps myself too. So it might be strange, it might be paradox. In the moment when you think only about your own family, your own future, and are trapped and do not see a way out. In this way, also to think of a longer future of not only you, but also all others, and to see, okay, what can I give now in this situation when I do not know further? And then the others will also come and give something. So for me, it's the community that solves this question. And I hope I understood you in the right way, that we have to think about the community and as human beings to give to each other so that we again, with the help of the others, can create a future idea, an idea of the future.
Я бачу навпаки роз'єднаність. І оце невміння об'єднуватися, це дуже, дуже складно. І оці місточки робити, прокладати, оце потрібно робити. Дякую.
This is what I mentioned quite in the beginning today with the attachment. When this closeness, when this, what I know from the past is completely missing, I have to replace it for some while with others, with people around. and to see, okay, how can I now, in this other new way with people around that I didn't know before, for instance, how could I do this so that we are a human community where we are, even in this crisis? That is the only that comes in
Thank
my
you
mind
very
now.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
We also have question here in the chat.
Yeah.
Daria, maybe you are able to ask Arno now
Yeah.
in voice, or I can read.
You
So
can also read.
yes, the question is how we can help to person who is depressed and have a burnout, and how we can help to him to get out from the difficult situation at work.
Here I would distinguish between the situation of a traumatized person, of a depressive person or person with depression, and a person with a burnout. These are three different ways for me.
Actually.
So for the traumatized person, it is as if this person is paralyzed. Inside there is an overactive system of anxiety, of arousal. This needs stabilization first. So Daria, when you have in mind a person who looks depressive, it's important to find out, is this a person who is traumatized and has a situation of being paralyzed, so all energy is stopped like the rabbit in front of the snail, frozen. In this situation, we need the ideas of trauma therapy, that the very first is to stabilize this person on an emotional level, using all four areas of stabilization, with the right smell, for instance, with feeling warm, with having a feeling of manageability, to act in a positive way, to become able to do something, and to be in a safe relation, to be in a safe contact with the counselor, for instance. So that's trauma. That's one. Stabilization. Stabilization is for the patient with the paralysis of energy. Depression is different. In depression, usually all energy of all four areas is going inside against the own person. A classical depression means that this person feels guilty. This person feels unable to do what is needed. This person feels guilty for many, many things that happen. In a crisis situation, trauma is possible, depression is possible. And in depression, it is important to be in a regular, frequent contact with this person, so not to leave this person alone, because in a depression, all this energy goes inside. And it is important, by having a mimic contact with a person online or in real time, so that this person has a regular contact about everyday situations, not about conflicts, not about the crisis so much, but about how is this person just now, to have a good interaction, like with parents and children. So in a depressive situation, when somebody is depressive with this inside turned energy, then it is important to have therapy or a person who is in a constant interaction each week or more often. And the third is this burnout. You can have also in a crisis situation after 3-4 years of the war, you know that, for instance, there come phases when you just do not have any energy anymore to go on. There is no energy. It's not depression, it's different. Depression is, it's against myself, I feel guilty and so on. And in burnout, you have the feeling, whatever I do, I'm not able just now anymore. It's a bit like Corona, like you have no energy. You would like to, but you cannot. In depression, it is like you don't know what for. It's not that you don't like it. You do not have any intention. You do not have any motivation in depression. But in burnout, you would like to, and you don't feel that. And then it is important to share this with others and to find out how can you come back to your body energy again when you are burned out in that way. And to find out for yourself what is needed for your body to come back to the energy, what is needed for you to have a regular rhythm in everyday life so that you can come back to a anyhow normality of having breakfast or having something that is regular in your life. So I would distinguish these three aspects, Daria, in this, what you asked. Would this be an answer for you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. About yes, thank you. And actually, for all of these 4 areas of stabilization, it's great. And your answer helps me to understand some other things. So
Oh,
it is the answer. Yeah.
Daria Smirnova, you mean?
Mhm.
There is also another question from Maria.
Yeah.
How to be in crisis and burnout again, and if there is no possibility to realize what you want to realize, and only duties are coming and overwhelming you, and you have no one to delegate these duties.
Mhm.
Wow. May I just say, like mothers quite often experience that? In the meaning of sometimes there is nobody else and you have to do it yourself. And still, also then, it is needed to share this feeling with others, even if you cannot really change it in reality. So sometimes you have these tasks, and still it is important to share it with others, to have a reflection, to have like a mirror for yourself, so that you see in which areas in your own life you might get new energy from in such a burnout situation. What is described here is the classical burnout situation, as far as I understood, Maria.
Mhm. And very often a question from Anastasia, how to find stability in the face of uncertainty?
Yeah, it reminds me of this feeling of everyday life. Oh, I know where to go to tomorrow. I know we will go to holidays next year. And you could plan something. And all this is gone. This safety of what will be tomorrow is gone. I think it is about this. Is that right?
Mhm.
So, in the moment when you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel anymore, in the moment when you do not know how to go on, so the uncertainty goes on, you do not know exactly how it will be. This is the situation when you have to answer for yourself the question, what did give me this feeling of safety in the past? For many people, it's a kind of faith, for instance, to believe in the good of human beings, to believe in a guidance that we have by religion, for instance, by God, for instance, or to believe in their own capacities, or to believe in that we will see each other again with the relatives. So if the faith is lost, then this feeling of uncertainty becomes unbearable. I see a balance between, okay, what did we have in the past as a feeling of, yes, wow, anyhow, I feel safe because I feel guided, or I feel that there is a meaning, or I feel that there is a future. What was that? And now in the situation when I feel the complete uncertainty, to remember that and to see, okay, even if it's uncertain, can I believe that there will be a time after that uncertainty and a new experience that I cannot know before? And I would like to compare it with two babies in the mother's womb, not yet born, the twins. And they are talking with each other. And one of them says, ooh, I'm so curious how it will be later. I'm so curious now how it develops. We are bigger and bigger and bigger, and the place is smaller and smaller. I'm so curious how it will be. And the other is frightened and says, it's smaller and smaller in here. We can move less and less. It's terrible, it's terrible. And when they are born, the first says, oh, here is air. And the next says, whoa, surprisingly, here is air. I didn't expect anything good after all that birth process. So it depends how you see it when you are born in future. And it's the same with the uncertainty in life, I believe, that I will never know how my life will be tomorrow. I do not know how my day will be tomorrow. We just have a family situation where you do not know how will it be with our relative suffering tomorrow. We have no idea. We have only the feeling of, okay, whatever comes will be around and that's it. And this gives us the faith of we keep together as a family. In other uncertain situations, you can see it like that baby that is not yet born. I do not know what will come afterwards. I cannot know because I have never been in that air, never been in the arms of my parents before, when I had been only in the womb of my mother. So uncertainty is something that goes through our life. And this helps me a bit to see it like a baby. Yeah. Uncertainty. I do not know how long I live. I could die this moment. I could die in 20 years. Who knows? And still, with this uncertainty, I lose the anxiety of the next day when I think, wow, but all the last days had been some surprises. Each day is a surprise and was a surprise, and I'm living today. It means yesterday, my yesterday anxiety was not needed. My anxiety the day before yesterday was not needed when I see that I live today. And with this feeling, like that baby in the mother's womb, maybe it helps a bit to overcome this terrible feeling of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So far from Anastasia Syotra, I don't know if this fits for you and your situation, or if there is more to find out together. Anastasia.
Thank you. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah.
Maria is thankful for your example with baby child. She's thankful. And another question, how can we as professionals and members of society help prevent the emotional wounds of family separation caused by war from becoming trauma that block children's healthy development? How can we find a very strong positum? Thank you.
This touches a very important question. Sometimes when I worked with families and with children, I had been very, very surprised how wise children can be. So very often in therapy, so very often in everyday life, so very often in medicine, I saw how small children of 5, 6 years could see the situation of the family so wise. Or even if a child has cancer, a very strange, very terrible situation for parents, quite often the children are more stable than the parents. So the family separation by war, when, for instance, the mothers go out of the country with the children, we have this now in Europe, then it is important to involve the children's needs, to involve the children's wisdom. They know what is good for them when they talk with us about it. They need also to know how we feel. As adults, we also can share with them, I do not know. We can share with them that I do not yet have an answer, but perhaps together we can find out something. Could we together find out how to write something together? How to find a fairy tale for the evening together? How to write a fairy tale for the evening that we can tell each other, for the others who are separate from us, for instance? Can we paint something for the others so that the children can take part in everything that we as adults experience? I think it is important to involve them. They are sometimes more wise than we think. Now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And we have one more question. Yeah, на bulgarski, да? Или I can translate now. How can...
Katerina, Milena is translating the question on English channel, so
Super.
Arno is listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I would distinguish between the crisis of the family you are in, like in a war, for instance. It's a crisis from outside. Depression, for me, is like an inner war. It is an inner crisis of the own person with itself. So that everything that wanted something before is stopped, like blocked, like smashed. The motivation is smashed anyhow. So in this situation, it is important, and again, I use a situation like father and child or mother and child. When children sometimes have a bad mood and ask, Papa, what should I play? It's boring today. I don't feel too well today. What should I do? Then as a father, I don't go and say, oh, it's terrible that you cannot know what to do. Then sometimes I say, I would like to go out to the garden, or I want to go shopping. You would like to go with me? So to take the person with you. What the parents do in this way, to live their life so that the children follow them, the parents are the models and you follow them, is the same that you can do with people with depression. You cannot give them hope. You can only be a model for somebody who stands up, who moves, who goes out, who goes shopping, or who comes to them, who starts to speak, and you can be a model with your mimics, with your interaction with your face. A person with depression has less mimics. You, as another human being, you can share your joy or what you experience. Oh, today it was cold outside. And while you say this, your mimics with the mirror neurons will introduce some smiling or change of the mimics also in the depressive person, the person with depression. So your body language, for my opinion, is the most important. It's not what we say, it's how we say it with our body language, with our mimics, to come into resonance with a depressive person who is innerly not moved, cannot move because there is no motivation. This motivation can come up with the mirror neurons, with the other, when we are the ones being a model to come into contact with a person that is depressing oneself, with this inner war against oneself. If you have the combination of somebody is depressive in such a terrible crisis, it means that you are the model for everyday life. When you get up to say hello, good morning to the other without expecting something from the depressive person, but to be in contact with that person so that that person can come into resonance with you. So far. Oh ja, gejuckt, huh?
Another question from Aliona. How we can help to person who come to specialist and ask for help, but the rest of family don't want to come for therapy, don't go to the contact. And
Yeah.
of course, it's not good for the person who is needed and who is asking of therapy. And what can we do?
This is something I'm so grateful for, what I learned from Nosrat Pezeshkian. Because in most family therapies, you say the whole family has to come in. And Nosrat Pezeshkian said, never mind, if they don't come, the ones who are coming can become the therapist for the family within these 5 steps of family self-help, like it is described in the Positive Family Therapy book of 1980. So this situation that you describe, I have very, very often in therapy when children or youth come to therapy, that some relatives do not come, or that a big part of the family does not come to therapy. It's okay for me as long as there is a link to the family by one person. And this person first, and these are also the 5 steps in family therapy for self-help, first just listen at home without criticizing. And just look at the others, listen how they are, without changing anything in the family. That's the very first step. And this is very difficult for some because they want to change immediately something. And in positive family therapy, you say, first only observe it without changing. First, we need to know what it is about and how do you feel? How do the others feel? So the first step is only observation without changing anything. Then, in the next consultation, you can share this. What did you observe? How was it? Oh, when father came home, everybody was anxious because he often is he is aggressive. And how is that? Everybody is silent then. So nobody speaks. Okay, you observed it well. And then comes the second step, what it is about. Father came home and everybody was silent. What does it mean? Nobody could be open anymore Before you talked with each other and then you had been silent. So openness was stopped. You had been adapted to not speaking. So had been polite to look for that person. Yeah, okay. So the second is observe and describe what it is about. What made you anxious and what made him aggressive? He becomes aggressive when we all come to him and everybody wants something from him. So he doesn't like that when he comes home from work. So it's too much for him with a contact then in this moment. Yes, he says he's a therapist. He says, I need half an hour for myself. But we want to play with him immediately, the children say. So it's about time. It's about that there are different expectations. He needs the time for himself and you need him immediately. Immediately. So it's about time and the contact. Both of you want the contact, but you don't want him to be angry. Okay. So we know first, how does it feel? Second, what it is about openness, about time, about trust, and so on. And then the third finger comes. Can you give a feedback? When father comes home, what could you say? I know that you need your calm time. Now we will leave you alone for a while. Is it okay? So the third finger is to accept first this, what is the need in the other person, without expressing the own need first, but first to express what the other needs. I know when you come home, first you need to have silence. Okay. And then in the fourth week or the fourth step, it's about, and what is still the difficulty? I don't want only his needs, I have also needs. So the fourth step is then, okay, you have the need to have some rest, and we have the need to play with you, but we have not so much time, and so we want to come to you immediately. How can we do that? So at home, they have this discussion that we would have in family therapy otherwise. So this person comes home as a therapist for the family. That is in my treatment. This is the idea of Bezeshkian, that each person in the family can become the family therapist within their own family by following these 5 steps of listening, naming what it is about, encouraging, the third finger, then naming the conflict and consulting about the conflict at home. And the 5th step then is to say, okay, if we wouldn't have this problem, what would we do then if we would not have this problem? What would be then? For instance, if we would see each other in that way, if it would not be a problem any longer, we could plan other things. What could we plan then if we would have that problem? So for Nosrat Bezeshkan, it was never a problem when somebody said, my husband, my wife don't come, or the relatives don't come, they don't want to come. Okay, fine. So let's work about that here in our consultation, and you can go on for yourself at home with the self-help steps. Is this an answer? Was it Evgenia or was it Alina? So it was for Alina, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. And also have some kind of interesting questions with if the child who grew up in a destructive family did not feel safe and was used to like a lot of anxiety, and then he gets into a calm and healthy environment, maybe he feel bored and may perceive the absence of anxiety and the absence of real life. So Is
This,
it
I think,
possible for future?
yeah. This exactly is this risk factor for the development of children.
Mhm.
Such children need other persons around that give them that safety that they didn't have before, like in kindergarten, in school, social workers or others, or even in therapy or in groups. They can have that, especially in sports groups or in groups with children of the same age. They need to have this experience of safety with others if they don't have it in the family.
Mhm. So, is it possible for the such of person to change his habits and begin to strive to the safety, making his like a new norm?
I would say the following. This child at home will not change quickly
Mhm.
because the pattern at home had a function. So when this child had a difficult behavior at home, this will not change easily. But you will see the tendency for becoming better when you ask the neighbors. How's the child when the child is with the neighbors or with friends? How's it then? First there, the behavior changes. At home, the same pattern like before exists, so why should the child behave differently at home? But with others, this child will experience a more safe environment and will develop. But the parents, quite often in the first half year or year, are not very satisfied with consultation because they say, nothing changes. But if you ask them, then what do the others say in the classroom, or the neighbors, or the friends of this child? How do they say it? And then quite often you find out, okay, there is a tendency to keep that pattern, of course, as long as possible at home, but to change it already outside.
Mhm. Yeah, outside. So, thank you. Yes, it was a question from Evgenia. She wrote about her. Thank you so much for the
Mhm.
answer. And maybe more questions there. So I'd like ask you about some recommendation for family uh, now in migration, how we can support people because it's kind of challenge for all the members of family and different kind of challenges.
In my hometown, we have a lot of people now living there since 2, 3 years, for instance, mainly women with their children, and the husbands are in Ukraine, for instance. It's a lot of families that are separated like this. And what I see as really needed and useful is that first they have groups with each other, not only in social networks, but also in reality, to have groups with each other and to have as good as possible relations with the environment they live in outside and to find the people who are really good for them. And they have to be careful with that to find out what is good for them or what not, and to find a new network around, not to feel alone, especially in a network of the migrants with each other is so important. Um, and very often I had the following impression: the children adapt very often easily to the migration situation in comparison to the parents. And the children bring in their friends in the families. So when the parents in a migration situation see that the children have contact with other children, invite them. Try to find contact to the parents of these other children so that with the help of the children, a new way of contact exists. Usually, parents from different cultures, for instance, with each other, have then a better relation when the children have already a relation by kindergarten, school, or other situations. That's the first, I would say. And the other is to find out how can you bring in your own cultural values in your private own life. With whom can you share it there? This, what you know. This, what you know as literature, as playing together, as being together in your own culture. With whom can you do that there? Usually with also other migrants or other people around there, concerning the 4 areas again. It's a very short answer. I cannot give you a more precise answer, but I would like to say the children are easy usually to find contacts, easier than the grown-ups, and the adults can follow a bit the line of the children that find out where do they feel well with other children, for instance. That's one. And the other, Germany is a country, for instance, where we had migrants always. It was always a country for migration. 200 years ago for miners and so on. 60 years ago for Italians and Spanish people that are integrated insofar as you don't distinguish any longer from which country they come from today. That's one. But on the other side, it is important to keep the roots to where you come from and to have this link. And this is done, for instance, by the Italians in Germany, or the Spanish people in Germany, or the Turkish people in Germany. They usually keep these roots like the Ukrainians do now that came to Germany also. And to know, okay, we bring in another kind of culture. What of this culture can we bring into this new culture? And you will usually, especially in villages, but also in parts of cities, find others with whom you can bring in your own cultural values, that what you love in your culture that you bring in, so that also the children are educated in that. That's important, not to forget that the children also need to learn the language, to learn the fairy tales, to learn the literature, to learn the theater or the plays, the games of the original culture they come from. Otherwise, they will search in the second generation for that later.
Yeah. Thank you. You give us a general direction how to support this occasion. Thank you so much. And we also have another questions from our colleagues. What do you think about people with addiction and their families?
Dear friends, I had not been very good at all in treating addiction as a medical doctor. Why? Because I had been polite, I accepted everything, I liked everybody. And in treatment of addiction that I learned later, working in hospitals for addiction, I learned to be more open, to be clear, and to say, this is what is not good for our family. This is not good what is for you. And this is what I have to say. So to be open and clear with each other, also in the family. So when you have addiction, and addiction is always in a family anywhere, the others in the family have the right and even sometimes the need to say, this is too much for me, or this is in that way not okay for me, and I want to talk with you about it. So to be very clear, when you see that there is addiction and it damages a person or damages a family. Addiction very, very often damages families. When I had been a family doctor in the 80s, I saw how often in Germany alcohol destroys families. The one drinking alcohol is not suffering very much, but the children suffer, for instance. So it's addiction, for me, it's more the addiction of family suffering. That the addiction causes family suffering, less suffering of the person who is addicted sometimes than the family as such has. And therefore, families need groups with others. There are so-called Alanon groups. That means relatives of people with addiction come together in groups and find out how to cope with a set situation and how to talk with the addicted persons so that the addicted persons finally go to therapy for addiction, because this is then needed if they are really addicted. You have to distinguish between abuse of substances and addiction. Abuse means it is a bad use of a substance, but it could be stopped. Addiction means somebody cannot stop with their own will any longer. And therefore the others have to have their will and their opinion and their openness to use so that there is a conversation with the addicted person possible. In a very short form now.
Yeah, but it's okay. Thank you. Yeah, and also we have the next question about the family myth. Yeah, how do family myths affect relationship, and why are they sometimes important for us?
In, like our colleague from Ethiopia says, each family has their own laws. There are family laws. It's the same with the family myths. So that there are taboos in families, that there are subjects in families that are not spoken out, that there are stories in families that are not told, untold, and each family has their own stories, histories, secrets, or also experiences that are transferred to the next generation. And finally, a kind of myth can come out that influences the family. In positive psychotherapy, after Bezeshkian, usually you ask for what was important for your father, what was important for your mother, what was important for your grandparents. And then you can find out why they had been in this or that way, why they did not talk about this or that, for instance. And then you can see there is the grandfather's family on one side, and there is the grandparents' family on the other side of the parents. Both of them bring in something. The parents bring it together and develop something own. To find out why the parents are like they are, you have to ask, why had the grandparents been like that? It reminds me of a little story that came up in therapy. A young woman prepares schnitzel, so it's a piece of meat in a pan, and each time when she puts it into the pan, it cuts it half so that the schnitzel is smaller. And her husband said, but why do you cut it? In the restaurants, they make it so big and it's so tasty when it's so big. And she said, no. I learned from my mother that it's much better to cut it and to have it in small pieces. It's more tasty. Husband was doubtful. And so when they came to their parents next time, she asked Mother, it's much more tasty when we cut the schnitzel than when we leave it as a whole like they do it in the restaurants. The mother says, yes, of course, I learned that from your grandmother. She did it so very well. So they went to the grandmother and asked, why is it more tasty when you cut it? And the grandmother smiled and laughed and said, at that time I had only a small pan, so I had to cut the schnitzel in the middle so that it fit to the pan one after the other. And when you liked it, it was very nice. So from one generation to the next and to the next, it was transferred, and the third generation did not any longer know why it was done. They had the bit, they did not need to cut, but they did it like in the old tradition. That was a myth, you can say. And such myths exist in many, many, many ways. So we have to ask, like Bezeshkian did, hey, What was important for your grandfather from your mother's side, from your grandmother? What was important for the other side? Did you experience them? What do you remember? Like Alfred Adler also asked, what do you remember as the most important words of your grandparents and of your parents? To find out what is important for them and why did this come from? My father sent me, when I had been 14, to the very cold water of the North Sea to learn to swim. It was terrible. Oh, it was absolutely terrible in this cold water of salt and waves to swim. Why did he do this? Because when he was a boy, somebody drowned in the water because this person couldn't swim. So he forced me to go to the cold water to learn to swim, not to be drowned like the other person. I didn't know that at that time. Much, much later I understood that. But I didn't like it how he trained me to swim, because it was not nice for me. And I didn't know why he did it like that. He didn't tell me at that time. Much later he told me.
Thank you.
Far?
Yeah, like a myth, like pass to the primary we destination. Yeah.
That's primary we, that's um, this collection of all these stories of many, many generations that had been told in the past, not written. We cannot read them. But they are also represented in our genes. They are represented in our epigenetic structure. We carry all these stories from the past.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
And
How was it? Yeah, yeah,
maybe the last question we have
yeah.
here,
Olga?
if it's possible, from Olga, I think, yes.
The question is, today it is not uncommon for mothers who are in exile with their children and whose children are taken into care by the state, which assigns them a social
Yeah.
worker, psychologist, and others, to be disconnected from quality interaction with their children. They shift them onto shoulders of the state. This greatly complicates the relationship between the child and the mother. How can these relationships be built more effectively? Oh, it's a very, very difficult and terrible situation sometimes. It should be like that, that even if there are social workers, these social workers help the families to stay together, not to take out the children. When I worked with social workers here in Germany, also in China and in these countries, sometimes, for instance, in families with drug addiction, it was even needed to take out the children, not to suffer, not to existentially suffer. But in most cases, it was much, much better to leave the children in difficult families and to bring in social workers who helped the families to cope with each other. So it's better to send somebody to the family than to take out the child of the family, in most cases. And for these social workers, it is so important that they have a good understanding of families, have a family therapeutic knowledge, and therefore we as psychotherapists can work with social workers so that we can help such families from the point of view of the social worker and of the family therapist and psychotherapist.
Mhm. For this kind of occasion, we need to develop our team spirit, how to be
Yes, they had a purpose. It's
person.
exactly that. And we have to find out what was the purpose at that time. Huh? I remember such a lot of things from my childhood, and today I think I did not know anything about that. Later I understood where it came from. So we can always ask, hey, why was that what is so strange today, why did that develop in the past? What was the reason for that? Why did Germans construct Mercedes, Volkswagen, and so on? Ah, that's the Germans. No, 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 no. It was not the Germans. It was the climate at that time. In summer, they did agriculture, worked on the fields. In winter, they constructed their instruments for agriculture from metal, and they digged and took out the iron, and they had wood and coal to make from that iron their instruments. And this centuries ago, many centuries ago, because in winter they had a lot of time, and in winter they could work inside with a fire with the metal. And so they became specialists for metal, like in England also, and constructed railways in England and cars in Germany because of the farmers 500 or 1,000 years ago who worked with the metal in winter times. So all that has a history. So it's not the Germans, it's the climate.
Mhm.
So far. How was that for you today, our soul evening? How do you feel after all that?
Ludmila, please.
Dear Arno, thank you very much. It's always very healing for me to listen you and this your idea, person meets person. Thank you very much. I told you that I feel you as a soul of PPT, and thank you very much that we have this possibility to be in this soul evening and to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments in the chat. When you have any questions, further questions, you can write me, of course.
Yes, and Todor is raising your hand, please.
Да, аз искам да благодаря на Арно, защото това, което ми се заби най-силно е, че понякога децата са по-силни от нас. И това ме подейства малко успокояващо.
Perhaps this as the last remark for that. As a medical doctor and as a psychotherapist, I saw a lot of children that experienced death of grandparents and so on, and of others in the past, but the parents did not dare to speak with their children about that event. And I found out as a psychotherapist and as a medical doctor that it is much better to involve the children, to take them to the cemetery when there is a burial, for instance, to talk with them about what you think as an adult about life and death. They want to know from you how that is for you. Share it with them. Dare to share what you experience when something happened and when you suffer from grief. Involve your children, tell them how you cope with it so that they have a model in you. Don't be silent, don't make a taboo of such subjects. Children can cope with it, even with some difficult emotional situations.
Diana, you can see a lot of thanks to you according to this meeting, and actually, yes, thank you very much for this really healing atmosphere, because you know the real master can heal even with his presence without any words. So, but you give us a lot of this. A lot of this. We are able to touch your knowledge, your experience, and your special deepness and your inspiration. Thank you so much for this. And of course, we don't want to say goodbye. Okay.
Thank you for your patience, and thank you for the questions, and thank you for your participation in our meeting today. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you.